Hello, I'm Andrew DeVries, and I'm the real estate broker that founded Probate Agent Real Estate Services. And today is the start of what is going to be an ongoing series of educational videos to help those working in the fiduciary world, particularly in the Bay Area. Most people have never heard of a fiduciary, but when families face situations like incapacity, complex trusts, or managing an estate, or after someone passes away, fiduciaries are often the people responsible for making incredibly important decisions. That can include managing finances, resolving family conflicts, and sometimes dealing with very challenging real estate situations. So today I'm speaking with Barbara DeVries, an experienced professional fiduciary who's also my mother, about what it is like to work behind the scenes in this interesting and dynamic and ever-evolving field of professional fiduciaries. Barbara, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
You look wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm going to just ask you a series of questions here. And the first one that I think is very important, because a lot of folks, believe it or not, have never even heard what a professional fiduciary is. For those who don't know, can you briefly explain what a professional fiduciary does and the types of situations where families may actually need one?
Okay. The word fiduciary means a person of trust. So like your broker has a fiduciary duty to you, means that the fiduciary has to think about what their duty is to the person or to the case, and not what's going to meet their own financial, emotional needs.
How did you get started in this? Because from my experience, you started doing this fiduciary work almost before most or any people in California. What was your background and how did you see a need?
I have a background in mental health. I still have a clinical social work license in the state of California. I worked in mental health for years and years and years. Then I got a divorce. I went off to Harvard and I wanted to do something else. And I had a colleague who became my mentor, and he was able to help me tell me how to start. And that was when we just had to register with the county. There was no licensing, there was nothing that could monitor people out there.
Right. And
I
that was Fred Isaacs,
read
right?
on
And he
yeah,
was also a social
started
worker, or what was his
that
background?
was, and he
Right.
started
Okay.
the fiduciary business with Sharon Toth
Sharon Toth,
and
right.
EMT Associates.
Okay.
Some
IMT.
IMT.
IMT. Yes. Yes.
Sometimes EMT, IMT Associates, and he was really my mentor. And he told me how to get started, go sit in court, find yourself an attorney, which I did. Jerry Witherspoon, whom I loved, loved, loved. And the fact that I was a social worker, I would go into hospitals and I was able to talk to discharge planners, and they would end up with elderly people in bed and they knew they couldn't go home, and they needed someone. They had no relatives, they needed someone to take over.
So they
So
couldn't stay in the hospital and they couldn't go home.
hospital
Wh-
has to get you out quickly
Right, right.
because Medicare says it's time to get out. I, I worked with the planners and the nurses to see if the person had a little money. So sometimes mail would come and they would look and they'd say, oh, yeah, yes, this, because I needed to get paid in some way. So I would take the case to the court and become the court appointed conservator. And then I'd be able to place the person.
According to attorney Daniel Prescher, who we
Yeah.
all know in the Bay Area, he was helped you as well, I think, in some of the first conservatorships, right?
Little
You
bit.
and Jerry
Fred was
Withers and Jerry
Fred worked
Witherspoon.
Fred worked with Daniel.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, great, great. So then, based on that, you did actually some of the first conservatorships through the
no.
court in California,
And I was busy from the beginning. I
right?
did this on my dining room table, and I had cases from the beginning. And the fact that I was a social worker, I didn't just handle money. I was able to make care decisions and, and deal with some of them had no family, but, deal with the staffing of the board and care or the nursing home, or if we could keep it home, get care people.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up about you coming from a social work background. I have been sort of observing fiduciaries for the last 30 years, and as the business and field has evolved, and you start to see people coming in from many different disciplines now, and they kind of have to learn the one discipline that they don't have. For instance, you had the social work, and they may come at it from a financial perspective, but they need to learn the social work aspect. So one of the things I know you are instrumental in is helping get the professional organization, the PFAC, Professional Fiduciary Association of California, founded and going to licensing in the state of California, that fiduciaries now need to carry a professional fiduciary license. And I'm just wondering how that piece evolved, and if you've seen that education, which wasn't around when you were doing this, has had a big impact on people coming into the field.
Well, I have to say, from my point of view, the finance part is the easy part.
Okay.
It's dealing with the people and the
Right.
issues
Right.
and the family issues and the care issues and the psychiatric issues. I think that's the hard part. And I felt like I had more of a leg up on that. The finances are not that complicated. You get an accountant, you get if there's a lot of money, you get an investment advisor. So it's not that complicated. You just have to keep really good records. But it's the other part. And to me, that was the more challenging part.
Yeah,
There's no peace.
Right, right. Well, and I think that brings up a good point. One thing I think I hear you saying is you need to build a good team of professionals around you to do the things that maybe you don't have the deep experience in, and make sure you're doing it right, like accounting and financial advisors and real estate brokers and all of those things. And then at the same time, that mental health piece, the care piece. And I think also, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's a difference between EQ, which is emotional educate, the ability to emotionally connect and understand a situation. And then, there's IQ, which is intellect. And I think probably the fiduciary world, folks that are a little bit heavier on the EQ side, may have an easier time, particularly when it's challenging family situations, challenging care situations, things like that. Is that a fair?
Some of us have both.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you for passing that on. I do feel, but I do feel that I have a little more of your EQ, okay, than your IQ. Not an insult, but yes. Okay, no, that's great. So as far as state licensing goes and PFAC, just any thoughts you have on how that all evolved?
So Fred invited me to something called CAPCAF, and I can't remember what that stood for. California.
That was an early PFAC.
Early on, and we discovered that there were 3 other groups, one in the LA area, one in the San Diego area, and in the Bay Area.
Okay, that had already been evolving organically.
Right, and then we all got together and became PFAC.
Okay.
And then the years went on.
What year roughly do you think that was?
I'm just thinking when we had our first conference in the Jack Tar Hotel, probably 25 to 30 years ago.
Okay, that makes sense.
That we formed that organization. And then we thought we should have licensing because we have people all over the state making big decisions, handling lots of money, and there was no way to have a hold that we didn't know who was doing what. And you really don't want to have rogues in this business because you get a really bad reputation. There's been a couple of times people have run off with money, and you didn't want that. We wanted a way to know. So we kept presenting PFAC. Bill had found assembly people to carry the bills to get licensing. And finally, I think after 4 tries, Jerry Brown signed it. But they had no funding for it. So it's got to be self-funded. And that's why our licensing costs so much. my social work licensing is $150 every 2 years. This is $1,300 every year because it has to be self-funded. So there we are. We have licensing. So we have a complaint process. And what happens is you get very disgruntled beneficiaries who complain about you. And you have to, I've really only had that once, but it was
Good.
really annoying. You
Right.
have to
Right.
answer all these questions. They make you like you're a criminal. And finally, they said, yes, we realize there was no wrongdoing. So you have to worry about those people they're not getting what they want. And they can't because your document you're working off doesn't allow that. Anyway,
Right. Okay. So it sounds,
I've
yeah.
only had one.
Okay, good, good. Well, no, I think that's an important piece to bring out because you're working in very challenging situations, and your duty, as you said at the beginning of this, is to the individual, the conservatee or the trust beneficiary who may still be alive, or the trust document itself, what it said, what their wishes were for their heirs, but the heirs and other family members may have a totally different opinion. So you're kind of in the hot seat when it comes to making these decisions, and they're not always popular. So I think that's a very common, so when you do get praise in your industry, you have to really take it to heart because it's sometimes few and far between, right?
I just got a really nice note. Now we don't send notes. Now it was an email about a trustee. We're working together to sell a property. And he just the nicest things about me. I said he was wonderful. It's so nice to meet those people. Absolutely.
Right. And again, I always tell fiduciaries and other folks I work with in this industry, read those notes over and over again because you're going to get far more negative criticism. So it's important to,
Yes.
yeah.